In other words, we need to think more modestly and subtly about when and how we can shape rather than control unpredictable and complex situations.
Hello and welcome to Verbal to Visual. I am your host, Doug Neill. Today I'm going to be sketchnoting a TED Talk titled How to Build a Business That Lasts 100 Years. I'm going to be using some relatively new materials today, a Pilot Bravo pen, and some gridded paper here within the Nemesine 180 notebook. Turns out it's pronounced Nemesine, and it means the goddess of memory. Thanks for the clarification there, comment section. My goal is to keep these sketch notes to a single page here, but we'll see how it goes. If there ends up being a ton of ideas that I like and I want to remember, I'm willing to go more than one page. And there's a couple reasons that I'm interested in this talk in particular. One is that I'm building a business myself. That's what Verbal to Visual is. And I'd like it to last maybe not 100 years, but quite a few if possible. And the second reason is that I know many of you, many of the viewers of these videos, and many of the folks that are interested in sketchnoting are also either building businesses of their own or are part of a business that they care about and they want to see grow and last over time. So I think that you'll be interested in these ideas as well. I'll be using just a single color for these sketch notes and the brick road approach, which I've described in a previous video, in case you want to go down that rabbit hole. So I'm going to get down to sketchnoting here, but I'll come back at the end to let you know what I think of the ideas that we're about to hear.
Imagine that you are a product designer, and you've designed a product, a new type of product, called the human immune system. First of all, it cleverly uses redundancy by having millions of copies of each component before they are actually needed to create a massive buffer against the unexpected. And it cleverly leverages diversity. This diversity of different approaches can cope with more or less anything that evolution has been able to throw up. And the design is completely modular. If one system fails, another can take over, creating a virtually foolproof system. The product is completely adaptive to threats that it's never even met before. It actually also does this with incredible prudence, detecting and reacting to every tiny threat, and furthermore, remembering every previous threat in case they are ever encountered again. The product is embedded in the larger system of the human body, and it works in complete harmony with that system. In order to apply the principles that underpin the miracle of the human immune system, we first need to think differently about business. We now need to master the art of biological thinking, as embodied by our 6 principles. In other words, we need to think more modestly and subtly about when and how we can shape rather than control unpredictable and complex situations.
That was an interesting talk. I enjoyed it. And aside from the early smear here, I both enjoyed and felt like this tool combination worked out pretty well. I did do some pausing of the video, both to be able to do some drawing and writing, and also to let some pieces of the sketch notes fully dry before I added some new ones to avoid more of that. And as you can see, if you watch the full talk, I pulled in the visuals that the speaker, Martin Reeves, used within his slides and just added some helpful text to give a little more details to the key points that he was talking about. Specifically, how the elements of the human immune system can be applied to building a business, and how it would be beneficial if we want to build a business that lasts 100 years to move from a mechanical way of thinking about things to more of a biological way of thinking. And as I'm starting to reflect now on these ideas, I kind of am thinking about them on 2 different levels. One, the personal level, like how can I, Doug Neill, as a person who wants to live a healthy life, apply these principles to the way I spend my days? What routines and practices am I building into my life as a whole to maybe live to be 100 myself. But then I'm also thinking about it on the business side. How can I, within verbal to visual, put things in place to make sure that these principles are at play in the systems that I'm slowly getting into place for verbal to visual. For example, when it comes to redundancy, having resources ready before they're needed. I am filming this video on a Sunday with the plan of publishing it on a Thursday. It has been a long time since I've actually been kind of working ahead, and it feels good to be slowly moving toward that. To not feel so rushed that I have to make a video right now and get it out as soon as possible, but instead do some planning ahead. When it comes to diversity, I think of not only diversity in terms of where people can find me, the social networks where I currently am putting out work and hopefully sharing useful things, but also diversity in terms of the products that I offer, so that I'm not reliant on any single platform or any single product to keep this business afloat. Not quite sure how modularity applies. From a purely resource standpoint, I feel like I've got a lot of flexibility here. If I were to lose this notebook, I've got plenty of other pieces of paper and notebooks that I can use to make these videos. If this camera breaks, I can use my phone if I need to, or pick up a new one once I'm able to. In a similar way, if this video happens to flop and nobody likes it, then that's fine, because I've always got another one coming. In terms of adaptation, I feel like I have the potential to adapt, that verbal to visual has the potential to adapt as a business because it is so small and relatively nimble, but I'm not sure if that's actually been put to the test yet. I think that where I have the most room for improvement when it comes to the work I'm doing here at Verbal to Visual is in this area of prudence. I feel like I don't currently do a great job of remembering previous threats and putting systems in place to make sure that those same threats don't cause damage in the future. And what I'm thinking about in terms of threats here aren't external threats, but more internal ones. There are certain things over the years that have kind of knocked me off of my game from time to time, and I don't always do a good job of remembering those over the long term. I might address whatever that thing is and kind of prepare myself for that threat if it comes again, but that only lasts maybe for a handful of months after the threat actually occurred. But once it gets far enough in the distance, I seem to forget about it until it comes up again, and then I have this setback and I have to go through that process again. So I think I could do a better job, especially that piece of remembering threats from the past and building in the systems to make sure that those same threats don't cause damage in the future. So those are my initial reactions to these ideas here. I think this is one of those talks where it would be useful to stick this sketch note up on a wall somewhere where I see it on a regular basis. And as I'm making decisions about what to do next with verbal to visual or what to do in my own personal life, I have that visual reminder. And I have these relatively few number of principles to consider as I'm making decisions. And I hope that you found these ideas interesting and might be able to apply some of them to a business that you're building or that you are a part of. And hopefully that this visual summary might come in handy as well. And if you enjoyed what I did here and want to learn how to do it yourself, there are a couple of resources that you might be interested in. The first is an intro course to taking visual notes like this. It's called An Introduction to Visual Note-Taking. And the second, if you've already got some sketchnoting skills under your belt, I've got a resource called How to Build an Online Course with Sketchnotes. So if you happen to be building a business and want online education to be a portion of that business, I think you might enjoy that resource. All right, thank you for watching. I'll be back soon with more sketch notes. Till then.